Welcome to Pario magazine, where I chat with individuals who have a desire to create. Today, I'm joined by an anime lover who has transitioned that passion into streaming, cosplay, and most recently, content creation as one half of the Sakura Society. Welcome to Pario magazine, Courtney Smith.
Hello, thank you for having me, Jamie. It's so good to see you and be a part of an interview like this. I think this is my first ever interview where I get to talk about my work rather than me interviewing others.
Yeah, it's always fun to interview people that do interviews and put them on the other side of the equation for a change.
It's crazy.
So, we're here today to chat about your anime love and the journey building the Sakura Society alongside former guest Brendan White. Before we dive into all of that, though, do you want to give our audience a little introduction as to who Courtney is away from anime and content creation?
I can certainly try. I think the big thing is for me, anime has been a huge part of my life. So even when I think about things that I do outside of content creation, I have studied Japanese. I've lived in Japan. I guess I love Japanese culture and eating Japanese food and trying a lot of different things. So for me, it's really hard, I guess, to separate that. But when I'm not, making content and when I'm not, on that kind of grind trying to get all those numbers, usually I spend my time playing League of Legends. It's my favorite game of all time. I've put so many hours and so much money into that game. So that's usually what I do. Other than that, I'm also a journalist and a writer. So I love writing about products. I'm a shopping writer, an e-commerce writer, or an affiliate writer. You can choose whichever ever of those three you like. Um, I've written for Pedestrian Group, for Urban List, for Games Hub, for so many sites, and I'm either usually reviewing games or I'm writing shopping content, which is my favorite thing to do for work.
Very nice. So, how and when did that passion for anime first develop?
That started, I think, very, very young, before I even realized what anime was. I was, 5 years old watching Sailor Moon and pretending that I was Serena. I was like, this woman on TV, that's me. And I was
Mhm.
convinced, and I would wear my hair in the Sailor Moon buns just 24/7. If my mum didn't do it, I was like, my day's ruined. You've just ruined my day, mum. So it started with that. Then it went to Pokemon, which, so many kids loved, and Cheese TV. And then as I got older, it switched to Yu Gi Oh! And this is where I kind of broke off from anime a bit because I got really into the card game in high school, and I would go to tournaments and I would play the card game. And, I love the anime, but it wasn't so much about that. But then in year 11, my best friend, she was like, "Hey, Courtney, you love Victorian Gothic literature. You should watch this anime. It's basically a Victorian Gothic story." And I was like, that sounds really cool. And it was Black Butler. And from then, I was just hooked. I changed my whole uni degree from media studies and journalism to Japanese. And, I guess my trajectory from that moment was very solidified in anime. And I did come back to writing and journalism, obviously, but I think it's just been a really huge part of who and what I am. And, I always knew I wanted to create something with it. So after kind of figuring out what I wanted to do and, continuing to watch anime for all these years, I ended up looking into content creation with anime.
Brilliant. I think looking back on Cheese TV, I don't think a lot of people realize just how influential that was on an entire generation of kids.
Yeah, truly. Like, even from its kind of earliest iteration where, you had the original 90s stuff, Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, those were like the two big ones. Then going into that second generation of, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, One Piece even, that I guess maybe like 10-15 year period really brought up Australian kids, right?
Hmm. Yeah, because that was where I discovered Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and Dragon Ball, which is obviously a big thing for me even today. Like, I just looked at it as, oh, cartoons. That's cool. But now you look back on it and go, this is a totally separate genre of cartoons.
Yeah, and I think, when I was watching it and, it was on before school in the morning, so you would, your parents would put it on and you'd eat your breakfast and then be like, "Get ready." And I'm like, "No, I have to finish the episode of Yu-Gi-Oh, Mom." Like, just wait. And I think even for our parents, while they didn't might not have necessarily known that it was, a whole different subculture, it it was in the shops. You could buy t-shirts, you could buy bedspreads, you could buy toys and cake toppers and anything you wanted from these franchises. And I think people really, yeah, at the time, no one really knew. So it's crazy to see that influence.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people would have then gone on to discover anime and like the like breadth of content there is in that space as well.
Yeah, because even like speaking of cartoons generally, even Western cartoons growing up, that for me was a big part of my life. Like if I wasn't watching Cheese TV in the morning, I'd go to school, come home from school, I would watch, whatever was on the ABC Kids channel, those cartoons there. Um, Daria, which I was way too young for.
Yeah,
um,
Dario, Rugrats, Hey Arnold, all of those.
Yeah, and then even, on Foxtel you have Cartoon Network and, Courage the Cowardly Dog, those cartoons, and then you had Disney cartoons and Nickelodeon cartoons, and it is such a huge part of, I think, our generation that I think if you ask anyone, in their, like, let's say like mid 20s to late 30s, if you ask any of them how their childhood was, cartoons I think are a big pillar of that.
Yep. So then how have your tastes changed over the years? Like you started with Sailor Moon and then went Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon and Dragon Ball. Like where have you since gone more recently?
I think it definitely, at first, when I properly got into anime when I was 16, I was watching Black Butler. I definitely went back and re explored those series that I loved as a kid. I looked for Sailor Moon and I looked for Yu Gi Oh! And even now, like, I've watched almost all of the Yu Gi Oh! Franchises except for the most recent one. Because every time one comes out, I'm transported back to that time as a kid. But now I think my I'm definitely more broad with my tastes. Like I don't just look for magical girls and card games on motorbikes. Like I'm looking for, these deeper stories that are told, whether it's originally through a manga or a light novel or even an original anime series, because the things that the creators of those shows can do to tell a story effectively are really, really fascinating to me. Recently, I was talking to Brendan about Makoto Shinkai, who did Suzume and Your Name. And I remember watching Suzume in the cinema, and he told the story of the 2012 Japan earthquake through this magical realism with these doors and a talking cat and a walking chair, and the way that the emotions are conveyed despite the, I guess, whimsy of that was really, really just brilliant and so shining. And I want to be more in that world and I want other people to see it more.
Is that sort of something that influenced the decision to go into the content creation path to sort of broaden people's perspectives and open people's eyes to just how deep anime is? It's not my mum and our generation's parents, like they look at cartoons and go, oh, it's like the Flintstones and stuff like that. It's not that anymore.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. And I think my passion for this medium, first of all, comes from how brilliant these creations are. Like, of course, if you're enjoying something, it's well done, right? Like it's not half-assed. So first of all, the creators of these shows and the anime and the manga, like they're putting their everything into it. So when I watch it and I enjoy it, I put my all into enjoying and consuming this content because, I think there's nothing else that can convey what anime conveys. And at the same time, like, you're watching something or you're enjoying something and engaging with it and you're building up this passion, and you get so full of passion. At least for me, at one point I thought, I can't, like, if I keep internalizing this, like, I'm going to explode. I have to share, right? Like, I have to tell everyone why this is so great, why they should enjoy it. And I think for me, I love the idea of, a cultural zeitgeist around these kinds of creations and this kind of media, because I think the best way to enjoy something that you love is by enjoying it with other people and sharing it with other people. And, even if one extra person, like, sees me yapping about, dan da dan or whatever it is, and they think, oh, I'll pick it up, then, for me, that makes me happy because that's another person I can talk to.
Yep. And how special is it to now like have a service like Crunchyroll where you can just go and watch pretty much any anime?
I think it is so special, and I think it's so important because back in, the 2000s and the 2010s, anime distribution, especially in Australia, was really on the back foot. We were really, really behind. And, I would want to own the anime that I watched. Like, as a teenager and in my early 20s, I was obsessed with, wanting to have it in my house and say, look, I've got this, I can watch it whenever I want. But it was so out of reach for me, as a high schooler, as a uni student with, not many funds. And a lot of it was, well, you have to find somewhere to stream it or you have to torrent it. And usually both of those options were pretty illegal. So
Mhm.
I think,
Or import like a very expensive DVD or something.
right, like there was no access. And even going, like, I would go to back in Perth where I'm from, there's this anime store. It's like an Anime Underground or something. It was really old. I don't even know if it's still there, but they had walls of manga and anime Blu-rays and DVDs. And every month my best friend and I would go and we would kind of adore everything and think, okay, well, we can only buy one thing. And even the manga was like $25 for a copy, like for one book.
Mhm.
And it was just so inaccessible. And I think, even though there are a lot of discussions about, you can enjoy media through streaming or, you can pay a service or subscription fee, but you don't own it. Even then, at least if I still get to experience it and other people can access it really easily, that is what's really important. Because if you really love something, you'll go out and buy it in the end anyway.
Yep. And a little debate I had online even this morning: subbed or dubbed anime?
Okay, so I I used to be very strictly subbed only. I think as a Japanese student, like I was learning Japanese, living in Japan, coming back, and then I taught Japanese. For me, I was like subbed only because not even necessarily because it's like that's how it's supposed to be watched, but for me it was almost study. So
Yeah,
I
it's the
used to,
exercise for you.
yeah, right. I used to be very strictly subbed only. And I could watch without subs, though I often didn't because the processing time when it's your second language is really, it's a lot. So I would usually just watch with subs. But then really recently, I was invited to the Solo Leveling movie and season 2 premiere by Sony. And we were watching it dubbed in the cinema. And it was just, I was like, I've never seen such great voice work. Alex Lay, who plays Sung Jin-woo in that series as the dub voice actor, it was perfect. I was like, I can't believe that these people are portraying such fantastic emotion, like dubbed over something. Like you've seen the crappy Netflix dubs of Squid
Mm,
Game, and it's
yeah,
like,
it's very bad.
right? And then, but then you get something like this, and I'm like, these people work so hard and it's come a long way. So now I'm very much subbed and dubbed, whatever you prefer. I think, dubs get that bad rap of the old 4 Kids Cheese TV dubs where they would change lines to make it more child friendly. And, the voice actors, I think it was still a pretty new thing. So there wasn't really an art to it, but now there is. And I can really, really respect that.
Yeah, I think sort of the Western distributors have realized just how like popular this genre is and are putting in that effort to hire high quality actors and do the dub properly and do justice
Yeah.
to the fantastic stories that they're trying to tell.
So you said you had a debate about this morning, though. So are you a subbed or dubbed fan?
I'm a dubbed fan just because I when I watch stuff, I like study every frame.
Yeah.
And I find if I'm trying to look at the imagery, but then I'm also like stopping to read, I find I just end up being stuck reading the subs and not actually taking in the artwork or the imagery as well. Like Squid Game is a prime example where I just watch the dubbed, even though I know it's terrible. But if I'm reading, I'm missing like clues and stuff in the background.
Yeah, and I think especially like it really does depend on the series, right? If the series is very visual heavy, think of Jujutsu Kaisen season 1 even, or those really detailed gorgeous anime, Chainsaw Man, you almost want to be able to really focus on the art or what's happening on the screen, right?
Yep. Um, One thing I did notice with the Squid Game season 2 season as well, I'm a person that puts subs on even for English language shows just to have that like reference point if because sometimes the mixing isn't great.
Yeah.
I had the subs on for the dubbed version of Squid Game, and that really broke my brain because the dub doesn't match the lips, but then the subtitles don't match the dub as well. I was like, oh god, no, I can't do that. I have to turn those off.
Yeah. So Netflix, they will always use the English sub track for any, like, even if you're watching it dubbed, so that the sub tracks don't match. And you'll notice that even my husband at the moment is trying to watch all of One Piece on Netflix, but he watches it dubbed. And I'll sometimes see like if the subtitles are on in English and the dub is on in English, it doesn't match. And I'm like, that would drive me insane.
Yep.
Because similar to you, Jamie, I'm the kind of person that needs like even the English like closed captions, just because like my auditory processing can be a little slow sometimes and I'll miss things. I'm like, wait, I have to rewind. I wasn't paying attention. So yeah, I'm exactly the same. And I've been watching Star Trek The Next Generation in obviously English, but with the closed captions, with the English subtrack. And sometimes I'm like, just Picard, speak up, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, modern audio mixing, not in a great space at the moment.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how much, because I know a lot of people do enjoy having those closed captions or those English subs while they watch something. So I'm curious to see if that kind of changes the media space in a way, even though it's not something that people like need, but the accessibility is really good.
Yep. Yeah, like I've noticed, because I go to a lot of movie premieres, we don't get the subtitles there. But I think a lot of movies are mixed for the theater.
Yeah.
So the audio isn't too bad. You can pick up all the dialogue. But then when you go and watch it on the TV, where all of that sound is coming from like one spot,
Yeah.
it's just mushy and gross.
Yeah. I think now that you mentioned that, maybe there is appeal in getting like a home cinema sound system.
So then, as we mentioned, you are one half of the creative minds behind the Sakura Society. How did you link up with Brendan, and where did the idea for this media group grow from?
That is such a good question, because it was a really funny, the way we met was really interesting, I think. So I before I met Brendan, I wasn't really into podcasting. Like I kind of dabbled with it a little bit, and I thought this is really cool, but I didn't really have, you know, a co-host, and I think solo podcasting is really, really tricky. And I'm the kind of person where, I'll write a script, but I just do dot points. So if you're by yourself and you're trying to read off of dot points, it's really, really hard. So I kind of I dabbled in podcasting and then I left it. But cool medium. And then I saw Brendan White, this guy just on the internet who was getting into anime. I was following him just because he was like, yeah, I'm starting to watch anime. I was like, cool, I like anime. He was like, oh, I have this podcast, More Than Hentai, and he tweeted saying he needed some guests. And I was like, oh yeah, I watch a fair bit of anime. At the time I was working at Pedestrian Group writing anime content for Kotaku Australia, and I had been dubbed by David Smith, the editor of Kotaku, Australia's biggest anime fan. So I was like, yeah, I'll be on your podcast. I'm Australia's biggest anime fan, and Brendan was like, yeah, sure, come on. And we talked about Darling in the Franxx, the first episode, which I only just recently finished watching. And it was great. Like, I'd been on podcasts before, but this is the first one about anime, and it was really fun just being able to talk about anime with someone who is just as passionate as I am. So we did that. That went fine. And then a few months later, he was like, oh, I'm looking for another podcast guest. Do you want to come on again? I was like, I thought about it. And I was like, I know too much. Like, my knowledge, you laugh, but I'm so
especially for that show where he's like introducing people to new things.
Yeah, right. Like, I've seen over 500 anime. I've watched so much over 10 years. Like, my knowledge is just too, I have too much knowledge for this podcast. I'm not a great guest, I think. And I said to him, I was like, hey, what if we did our own anime podcast? Like, you and I, and we do, like a weekly or bi-weekly thing. And I thought he was going to shoot me down. Honestly, I thought, he's probably too busy. He's got his job and then he does this podcast. He won't have time. And he was like, that's a great idea. And I was like, wait, are you serious?
Yeah, I guess it makes it easier for him. He's not trying to find a new guest every week.
Right. And so I was like, well, I'd love to do an anime news podcast, because so many anime podcasts, right now, they're very focused on either one series and doing recaps of the episodes, which I enjoy, but, it's a bit oversaturated, or they're doing like reviews, or they do interviews with people. And I was like, let's do a news podcast and deliver anime news, because I think they don't really notice anime news very much, because you need to really search for it. So I thought, let's cover that, and in a podcast format, because no one else is doing that. There's literally no one covering anime news, especially in Australia, and as far as I know, the world. So let's do it. And so we it was like a month from when I first suggested it to when we released our first episode, because we both were just like, yeah, this is how we do it. It's going to be so easy. Like, I'm in charge of the scripting. I'm in charge of, looking up the news, all of that journalist stuff that I'm good at. And then Brendan was in charge of, recording, editing, and posting. So we had a really, really good system going. And then as we kind of kept going and it picked up, because we called it More Than Headlines to match More Than Hentai. As we kept going, I was like, Brendan, I really want more from this. I think we can do more. And I saw there's another Australian anime podcast, Gateway to Anime, who I adore. I think they are so fun and so funny, and they all record in a studio because they're all Sydney based. But I saw they're pretty big in the anime podcasting space in Australia, and as anime content creators, I was like, I want to do like what they're doing, So I said to Brendan, I was like, I want to be as cool as them. And I really admired what they were doing. And I was like, Brendan, I think we need to change the name, because I think More Than Hentai is not great for SEO. And he was like, oh, but I really like it. And I was like, I know it's your baby, but I think if we want to do what they're doing and get bigger, we need to fix something. And so we decided we'd make, I guess, a media brand is what you would call it, or like a podcast brand. And we're like, yeah, we'll settle on this. And that way we can have, if we want to add more podcasts or add more stuff, we can always add it underneath. And then he still gets more than hentai. And so we ended up, we were talking about names for ages. We settled on Sakura Society because it was, you know, still Japanese themed. And I wanted a real, like, not necessarily like physical space, but something that sounded like a club almost, where people could like hang out. So we went with Society, and that was the name. And then from there, we were just like, all right, balls to the wall, branding, go, Patreon, go, Discord server. Like even Brendan, who just never used Discord, I like showed him how to do it because he was like, what do I do in this space?
Discord's intense if you've never used it before.
Right? And now he's in there every night playing Marvel Rivals with his pals, like in the server. So yeah, it once the ball started rolling, it snowballed.
And how has that sort of experience been, and what have sort of been some of the biggest challenges and lessons learned along the way?
I think for me, it's been really, really fun because I've picked up a lot of skills and I've learned to ask for more and be a bit greedy as well. So, you know, I said to Brendan, I was like, hey, I would love to help you with the editing, like, you know, and the social stuff. Like, let me do clips for TikTok and I'll do up the copy for those and everything. And, you know, let me be a bit more involved. Like, I wanted to be more involved in it. And he was like, yep. And for some reason, once again, I was like, oh my God, he's going to say no. But of course he did. Like, you know, he's such a nice guy. Like, he's so accommodating and so flexible. We both are, which is why it works, I think. But yeah,
And to be fair,
so
you keep doing things that make his life easier.
right? Like, why am I so like, ugh. Anyway.
You're saying, hey, I can't do this anymore. Can you do the script as well?
Yeah, right? Like, so yeah, I've learned a lot more. Like I've learned about more video editing on my computer because I did a lot on CapCut on my phone when I was doing my anime content solo. I did that. I've learned about like posting and, you know, I have experience in SEO, but it's all very editorial and written for websites and not so much social. So I'm learning that, which is really, really great. We decided we wanted to kind of open up a Patreon, which has been an experience. We're like, I said to Brent, I was like, do we need like a business number? Like I have an ABN, but like I don't know anything about a business. And he's like, no. So it's been interesting, especially because I didn't know for a really long time that Brendan was just so knowledgeable and, you know, he founded 8-Bit and I'd never heard of it because I'm, you know, I'm younger and I'm new in the space and people know him. Like everyone knows Brendan and I just waltz up and I'm like, hey, big guy, do this thing with me. And, you know, he just went along with it. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is like if you want to do something with someone and you get along with them, just ask. Like, you know, the worst they can do is say no. And if they say yes, then you get to do cool shit. Like, so that's my biggest thing. Cause yeah, Brendan, I was out at dinner with him when we recorded the Sakura Society announcement video. I was with him and my husband. And he's like, yeah, so like with Panda. And I was like, you mean the streamer? He's like, yeah. I'm like, what about Panda? And he's like, I manage him. I was like, excuse me?
What?
What? Like, and Dan's like, yeah, I talk to Brendan. My husband is like, I talk to Brendan all the time through work. I was like, what? Why has no one told me any of this? What is this secret that everyone
We've got all
has?
these secret lives.
Right? Like, hello? And, you know, I'm like, that's Brendan, the like other podcast host where we have like a straight man funny man gag. Like, you know, what is this? Like, so yeah, it's just been so wild.
You walked into like your own little anime with a bunch of secret identities and secret societies going on.
Yeah, what is this, like, spy family? Like, secret influencer manager, podcast founder, best gaming podcast in Australia for a bit guy. And I'm like, I like anime.
So then, like on that note, what are some of the top tips that you have for others, like particularly women looking to carve out
Mm.
a niche in this content creation space?
I think the biggest thing is, while you're still small and maybe have a bit less influence, just do a bunch of stuff. Like, I think being able to play and experiment in this space is really, really important, because I see a lot of people, they become really popular really quickly overnight off of one video, off of one tweet, one piece of content. And then I think it kind of almost locks them into this space where, if they divert from that, maybe like their followers won't be too happy, or their audience changes completely. And obviously I've never experienced this, so I'm talking from perspective. But I think being able to play in the space with lots of different things, do what you like doing, and something will come from that. Like, just consistently uh, going to events, networking with people, like talk to people, and play. I think for me, I say this word a lot. I love this, the idea of play, and just social media is about playing and
Mhm.
having a go and experimenting, whether it's videos, or you're doing Instagram reels, or even like a static photo. Even on stories, just play. Like, my stories are just me messing around, doing what I want whenever I want. And, I have my niche, of course, but just even having fun with it is the most important thing, and looking at it as a hobby first rather than a job, I
Yep.
think.
And yeah, I would agree with that. Like, it's always evolving. Like as a content creator, it's not okay. I make this thing and that's it. Like you need to experiment. How else are you going to find new people? If
Yeah.
it's just the same thing over and over again, it's never going to find a new viewer or a new audience member. So what the hell? Like try something. If it doesn't work, then oh well. It was one episode or
Yeah.
a week or whatever.
Well, even Brendan and I with Sakura Society this year, I said to Brendan last week, I was like, I think it would be really cool if we did more like static images on our Instagram, like static posts, because at the moment all we have is reels. And I'm like, if someone comes to the page and they want to find out more, and it's like a bunch of videos, how are they going to find out more? How are they going to learn more? Like, let's do some static images for them to kind of scroll through and have a look at. We did a static image about our Discord. We hadn't advertised our Discord, but we're like, how do we get more Discord members? And it's like, post about it.
I
Like,
saw that post. I thought you just launched the Discord.
no, like, it's been open for so long. I'm like, we only have 30 people. What? Like, but and it's things that you overlook, that when you're doing it, you're like, yeah, people will enjoy this. It's good. And it's like, if they don't know about it, like,
Mhm.
and don't be ashamed to post and advertise and hype yourself up. Like, that's the biggest thing, I think, like, especially for Sakura Society, that I've learned. Like, just be shameless and go, like, push
Yep.
yourself, because people, while I love making content, and while you love making content, and Brendan, whoever it is, all the content creators, there are people who have no interest in making content. They want to consume. We create, they consume. And, at first you're kind of sticking feelers out to other creators, but as more and more follow you, you'll end up finding the consumers, right? Like, as you grow and explore and network, you'll end up finding the consumers, and the people that they're interested in your content.
Yep. And yeah, one of the other things I would also point out is don't be afraid to reshare things
Yeah.
because like the way social media is at the moment, you might post something and 50% of your audience may never see that. So post
Yeah.
it again.
Yeah. And post it on stories. If it's an Instagram post, always share to your stories.
Yep.
Please, I'm begging, because sometimes I open Instagram and I look at stories for like half an hour and then I get off that. Like
Yep.
half the time I don't even scroll down to the posts. So, always share on stories. If I see a creator or a cosplayer that I really like, especially cosplayers are so good at social media, but they will post a cosplay on just their Instagram feed and then immediately share it to their stories every single time, and they'll share other cosplayers' content to their stories too. And I'm like, cosplayers are geniuses at Instagram. Just follow cosplayers and you'll see how it should be
But
done. Truly.
yeah, and like reshare things in different formats too. Like
Yep.
myself, like when I write up these articles or do my podcast and reviews and things, like the podcast is getting posted as a graphic and then reels and then YouTube shorts. And it's just like, and then on Twitter, I'm like, here's the graphic. Here's the link to the episode.
Yep.
Here's a short. Here's a clip. It's like, you just got to keep posting it. Like
That's
people
it.
might get sick of seeing the same thing over and over again, but there's also going to be 5 or 6 people that are seeing something for the first time.
Yeah. Just, yeah, keep sharing and be consistent, right? The reason that Brendan and I really love doing the anime headlines podcast, is that it's a weekly thing. Like every week, we just create a week's worth of content, in even more sometimes. Like sometimes we'll have like a really banger episode and I'll pull out like 8 little, short videos. And I'm like, all right, Brendan, like go post these over the week. And, it goes into the next week. And giving ourselves a backlog of content is also really good.
Yep. Yeah, if someone's suddenly sick and can't do an episode, well, you've got some stuff that you can share anyway.
That's it.
So, as we close out our conversation, what are some of your most anticipated anime properties coming in 2025?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so first of all, obviously we have Sakamoto Days. That is the, streaming right now on Netflix. For us, for Brendan and I at least, that was our biggest for this season. But I guess if we look beyond this season, I'm looking forward to season 2 of Aharen-san, which is an anime about a girl who has no concept of personal space. She's just like this tiny little high schooler who doesn't really talk and just like gets in her senpai's way all the time. That's getting a season 2. I'm so excited. Dandadan season 2 is coming in July as well. Everyone last year, Dandadan was just took over everyone's screens, and I'm so glad. It was fantastic. We're getting a season 2 of that. We're also getting an animated version of The Summer Hikaru Died, which is based on a horror manga that's really unsettling. And everyone's
That's
been
it.
waiting. Yeah, it's everyone's been waiting for the anime of this for a long time. So that's going to be a fantastic horror one to watch out for. I think it's maybe like October-ish. And then a lot of it is season 2's Oshinoko season 2. Final season of My Hero Academia is coming out. Um, yeah, all these shows. And that's not even the stuff that I haven't heard about yet, right? Like every
Mhm.
season, at the end of every season, I go through and look at what's coming out the next season. And I spend, I want to say like 2 hours just like meticulously picking through all of this anime to figure out what I want to watch for that upcoming season. And it involves reading plot synopses, watching PV trailers, sometimes of which there's like 3 different promotional videos, looking at the source manga, like, is that good? Are people reading that? Because sometimes stuff will come out and you just, like, you've never heard of it. And, you either watch it and find out if it's good or bad, or if you do research like me, then you can figure out if it's good or bad early on.
Yep. And there's also the final season of what's that show called? The one with like the giants.
Attack on
Attack on
Titan.
Titan.
Yeah, they're doing so the
Like a
film.
movie or something?
Yeah, so the film that's coming out for that, I believe, I want to say it's in the first half of this year, I believe. That
Yep.
is coming out, and that is the last 2 episodes of the final season of Attack on Titan, but they're cutting it into a movie essentially. And I think one of the coolest things about anime recently is being able to watch it in the cinema. Because it's such a different experience. Like I watched the first 3 episodes of Dragon Ball Daima in the theaters, thanks to Sugoi Co, who kind of helped with the distribution of that, and it was fantastic seeing like Shenron like massive looming over everyone in the theater. I was like, this is sick. Like if you can watch a series in the cinema, please just go.
Yeah, I'm kind of. I got the email about that Attack on Titan. I was like, well, that sounds interesting. Might have to check my schedule and make sure I can get to that one.
Yeah, definitely. And there's also the Oshinoko finale, which is a live action film, is coming to Australian cinemas in at the end of January, end of this month. And I'm curious because it's live action, so we'll see how it fits in with the world. But it is the end of the story, so I'm keen, but we'll see.
Brilliant. So finally, where is the best place for people to support you and track the creative journey moving forward?
Uh, First of all, if you want to follow and support Sakura Society, you can find us on all of the socials at the Sakura SOC, SOC. We also have links to our Discord in those bios, so come and say hi because we're always hanging out in there, Brendan and I. Like, usually it's just me live blogging whatever anime I'm watching. If you're interested in me and my work, which is mostly making League of Legends content, some cosplay content, and anime content, you can find me at Kotoni_san, so KOTONI, sometimes double I _SAN. And yeah, just drop me a line if you want to talk about anime. Do it. I'll yap.
Awesome. Alrighty. Thank you so much for taking the time and good luck with everything. And we'll hopefully cross paths at some form of anime cinema event.
Yes, thank you so much, Jamie. It's been so fun.